Hello, welcome to another episode of the Multiplatform Architect, and today we are going to be dealing with the sidebar, side navbar and the floating navbar. So without wasting time, we are going to go into our common main, open our Kotlin folder, then you can see the application is there, our entry point, you can see the data, then the presentation, you're going to check in the UI, you have the navigation, you have other folders as you can see, also have the view model here. We shall open our app. As in our last episode, we are able to talk about the window size, how we could structure everything using different sizes and widths. So today we are going to be implementing the roads among others. Without wasting time, let's try to dive deep into what we've come to do. So we're going to start with annotating using serializable. So we're going to use serializable annotation. Then we are going to create a sealed interface class, which will be a sealed interface. Okay, sealed interface, and we are going to call it a nav destination. And in this nav destination, we are going to pass in the route pattern as a variable. So we shall declare a route pattern. We shall call it a string. So what this does is like it's everything. We shall implement this like as serializable helps us to be type safe in everything that we are trying to do when we are navigating between different screens. And this input is obtained from our Gradle, as you saw when we started this series. Okay, so after implementing that, which has the serial class and the serializable, we shall now have to implement an object, and the object shall also start with serializable, and now we shall put the object, and the object shall call it the routes. So what this does is like this will be our single source of truth for all routes within the app. So no more magic strings, everything is object or a data class in this case. So we are going to implement them without wasting time. So add serializable. We shall call it the data class, data object. This doesn't have an argument, so we shall call it a data object. We shall call it a dashboard. Now this means this will be navigating our dashboard. Then we shall extend the nav destination, and then we shall pass in the override. This override should be a route pattern string. Alright, so in this case I want to simplify our expression, so let me first remove this. Okay, so this is equal to, then I will have to pass in the string, which is the dashboard in this case. Dashboard, oh sorry, still have the typo here. Okay. Alright, so now we shall also have to implement another route. Serializable, hit enter, then data object. We shall call it schedule. Then this will also extend the nav destination. Alright, then after that we shall also pass in an override which takes in a route pattern, and it's a string. Okay, so let's remove this, and the meaning will be equal to the schedule. Alright, so we shall do the same for the next routes as we shall be seeing. So after implementing our settings, and we shall also try to create the object. Actually, this is the class, and this will be for the message detail, since we will be taking an argument, message ID as an argument. So let's try to create it, message detail. Then in the message detail we shall try to pass in an argument, and in this case we can declare it as string message ID, which is a string. We shall also extend it to the nav destination. In this case string, extend it to the nav destination. Also nav destination. Alright, so shall override it with the route pattern. Okay, so this will be equal to the message detail. Okay, so now for the class, we always have to pass in arguments. That's why we use the data class. Okay, so after implementing our routes object, that means that this will always help us the single source of truth for all routes within the application, and everything is always an object with data class. And for the message detail, it is a class because we want to pass arguments safely, and that's why we had to pass in the ID as a string. So okay, after implementing all this, now what next is we shall have to implement the side navbar. We shall have to implement the side navbar, so we can try to see how it will be looking like. So now for the side navbar, we see that it has the side navbar icon, and the icon, when you select it, it changes color, and it is not selected, it has a different color, as you can see here. So now what we are going to do, we are going to first navigate to our component section. We're going to first navigate to our component section, and then we shall create a new class. We shall create a new class. Okay, let's call it side navbar icon. Add it to Git. Alright, so okay, this let's call the composable annotation composable, hit enter, and let's create a function which is a side navbar icon. And this function will take in some parameters, and one is the icon, and it will be an image vector. Okay, then the next one will be is active, which is a boolean. This shows whether the item is currently selected or not. So active is active boolean, which is a okay. Then we shall also pass in a modifier to allow maybe like extra padding spacing. We shall also add an on click, which like this is to show what happens when someone taps maybe the icon. So we shall continue. Okay, we shall continue, and that is extends the unit function. This unit function will just pass in an empty body for now. Then we shall open up, and then now we've finished passing our parameters. So the icon it is to show what we want, maybe the dashboard icon among others. Then the boolean is to show that it's currently selected or not, so it takes in a true or false. Then for the modifier is for extra sizing, spacing, or position if needed. Then also have the unit function. Okay, so now we are going to pass in our body, so let's declare some variables here. So we're going to first declare a background color. If and this will be equal to if is active. So this will be checking if the icon is active, what will happen, what will be the color. So if it is active, we shall pass in a material theme. Okay, material theme, enter material theme, enter color scheme, then dot primary. Okay, so if it is active, it will be an active. Then else if it's not primary, then it will be, let's pass in color. In this case it will be color, this color dot white. Okay, you can try to add an alpha. Okay, dot copy, then we shall pass in an alpha, or alpha of 0.08 f, because it's a float. Alright, and after that we shall, now that means that this will be able to handle our icon when it is selected. When it's not selected, we will be able to show white. So we shall also try to create another variable, and this variable will be for the icon color in this case. So after that, after implementing the icon color, we shall continue with the box. Okay, we shall pass in the modifier, and after our modifier, we shall put in the size, and the size in this case is put 48 dps. And then after that, we can also pass in our background color. Okay, so we also have a shape, circle shape, then also have a background color. In this case, we'll take in a background color. Alright, so after that, we have also now when this clicked, what will happen? So we shall add a clickable, then we shall pass in on click function. Alright, click from the above. Okay, we shall also pass in a content alignment, and in this case it will be alignment dot center. Alright, so after putting all those, we shall try to put in a body. In this case, we shall put in an icon. We shall put in an icon, and this icon will be taking in an image vector, which will take in our icon that we declared at first. And we shall also have our content description, and this we can put it to null for now. And also have our tint, which will be our icon color. Okay, tint. In this case, we shall put in our icon color. Alright, okay, our icon color. Then we also need to give it a size. So let's try to give it a size of maybe 24 dps of a size. Then we shall pass in 24 dps. Alright, so I think we'll finish now. This is an icon, and then we shall also put it in a box as it will be declaring the shape and all that stuff for the icon, how it will be looking like. So after implementing it, now we need to see how will it behave in the real application, like how will it look like. That's why we have to preview. That's how we shall have to preview. We shall have to preview our side icon. So we shall preview, then we shall have to give it a name. In this case, we shall have to give the name. In this case, it's always a string. So name in the preview, we give it as a string. So we shall give, say, sidebar icon, and this is for the dark mode. We're going to begin with the sidebar for the sidebar icon for the dark mode. Right after creating the annotation, we shall also put the composable annotation. Then we shall create a function, and this function shall call it sidebar icon dark preview. Okay, preview. Then we shall open up the body, and then we shall pass in our Aurora theme. Okay, Aurora theme. But here we have to specify, is it dark, is it in light? So we shall pass in our dark theme to true, because this is in dark. Alright, so we shall have now to put in, we shall create a box. This is just for the background, for the visual appearance. So we shall put in a box, and we shall pass in a modifier. Go to modifier, shall pass in a background. This background, you can maybe try to hard code a certain color here. I'll try to give it a more color. Shall try to give it a color. Okay, give it a color. Alright, though it's not necessary that you can typically give it this. You can give it also your own color, even some colors from the theme. Now we also give it a padding of 48, 40 dps, and can also continue. Then in the body, we shall now pass in our sidebar icon. Okay, then we can continue. Let's try to put the parameters, the icons. Let's try to move these to those. Okay, the icon icons dot default, and this way to use a grid view icon. Now we shall also try to initialize this. Actually, for now we shall put it to false. Then we shall also go for the modifier, and I can see that when I remove them and yet is happening. Maybe let me just continue and put all of them. So here we just pass in placeholders. So put in the modifier, I just pass in an empty lambda so that it doesn't do anything within the preview. Alright, after doing that, we shall have to see how it will be able to preview within our Android Studio. Let me first close this. Okay. So after preview. So after our preview, we shall try to see how it will be looking like. Okay, so that's how it looks like. Now, since this is a dark preview, we shall also try to implement the light, but let's first copy this. We shall copy that, and then we shall have to paste it just below. The only thing will be maybe changing the text from dark to light. Be changing from dark to light. Then we shall change this to false, since we are in the light mode. Then we shall see what we'll be able to preview. So it is showing also the background color, same background color. So we can try to change this color to maybe white. And then we'll see what will happen to the background. Alright, so that's what happens. So that's how it is able to be previewed. So you can be able to change the color, not necessarily white. You can try to use maybe Aurora theme. You can try to use Aurora theme. So it will be Aurora theme dot glass. You're going to get the glass colors, and now in this case, let's just get the one with the gradient. Okay, so the one with the gradient simply puts some gradient in the background, as we shall be seeing how we shall be customizing our backgrounds to how we saw it. So after, you can be able to see that small gradient in the background. So now we've finished implementing our icon. What we are going to do now is that we are going to create the bar itself. So we are going to create the sidebar in the navigation folder. So we're just going to come to new class, then we shall create a side nav bar, side nav bar. Okay, this will be it as a file. Alright, so we can add that to Git. Then what we shall do here, we shall try to create a sidebar destination data class. Okay, we can call it an enum. Yeah, we are going to create an enum. We shall call it a sidebar destination, and we shall initialize some variables. Let's try to initialize an icon as an image vector, and then we shall also initialize a label. Our labels, for example, it's a dashboard, should be seen, and maybe it be having a label of a dashboard. Same thing applies for settings and also others. So this will be a string. This will be a string. This will be a string. Okay, then we shall try to create the destinations now. Let's start with the dashboard. We shall start with the dashboard. In the dashboard, we are going to pass in the icon. In this case, maybe icons. Let's try to import this. icons, then we shall use the default icons, then we shall use the grid. Okay, then for the label we shall just call it a dashboard. Okay, after this we shall just try to implement also the remaining one, but you can just okay, we shall also implement the schedule feature. Right, icons dot default, then we shall use the calendar today icon, okay, from material 3. Okay, oh, that's the one. Oh, so we shall have to also put the label, which is the schedule. So when we come back to our application, you can see we have these two icons at the bottom, so we shall also have to improvise it and also add them, so that will be the support and the reports. Let's first add this one, so icons to default. Okay, we shall also add its icon, shall put the flag icon for the reports, then shall also pass its label. After that we also need a support route. As we saw, we had also the support route. So we shall put support, then we shall call the icons, and then we use the default icons. Okay, so here we shall just use the help line, this help outline icon. Okay, so now we shall also put the label as support. Okay, so after implementing all this, we shall have now to implement. So after implementing the whole of this, these routes and everything that will be happening for our navbar, side navbar, we shall have now to create a private class, not necessarily composable. Shall have to create a private data class, and in this case we are going to call it the side navbar item. We're going to create a side navbar item, and in this we are going to pass in some few parameters. I want to pass in the sidebar destination, let's call it dest. Need to be verbal, so it's just passing dest. Then we shall put in a sidebar destination. Okay, so we shall create a variable, another variable, which is the navigation destination. So just call it the nav dest. Then we shall extend it to the nav destination. Alright, so we finished creating our data class. So what this does is to pair the sidebar destination with our actual type safe navigation destination. So here is our sidebar destination, and then we will again pair it with the nav destination. This will is our operation. So now we are going to create a composable that will be containing the actual nav rail within our common main. In this case, the composable shall create a function, and in this case we shall call it the Aurora navigation rail, and in this function shall pass in NavController as an argument. NavController shall extend with the NavController. We shall pass also the modifier. Okay. Then after that we shall have to create the body for this function. Okay, now in this body we shall also need to create some variables, and these variables will be, maybe let's try to create them. I'm making a mistake. Okay, I shall initialize val backstack entry and try to okay, shall initialize by NavController dot current backstack entry as state. Okay, so now try to import. Sometimes this error is made because we haven't imported the runtime, the Compose runtime import, which we always need for it to operate. So we shall import it, then after shall also declare another variable, and we shall call it a current destination val current destination. So this will be able to obtain our current destination that we are in. Okay, we shall call the nav backstack entry, then we shall also call it destination. Alright, then after that we shall have now to also define our primary items. So okay, this is equal to the remember, just in case to avoid recreation. Then here we shall pass in a list of, in our list we are going to pass in the items. Okay, so we shall call this navbar item, shall pass in the destination. The first one is the dashboard. Also pass in the route, because the route is the dashboard, also routes the dashboard. Okay, so and we are going to do this for all the remaining items. So what this does is, like, we define our primary items here using remember, so the list doesn't get repeated in every recomposition. So now let's continue by implementing the roads. So you can just copy paste, or maybe you can control D. Then we shall change the dashboard to schedule. So change this route from dashboard to schedule, and we shall also change that one. So after concluding our list, we shall have to create a surface where we shall wrap everything. So we shall have to wrap everything within our surface. So we shall pass in a modifier, and then we shall pass in the size, or maybe the width in this case, which is 64 dps. Then we shall fill the max height, because it has to fill the max height when it's on desktop or maybe even web flat screens. Then let's pass in the color. In this case we shall put the Aurora theme. Let's try to import it. Okay, Aurora theme, and we shall obtain our glass colors. Okay, we should try to enter. Then we shall call the surface color. We shall try maybe to put an alpha of 0.8 and say float. Alright, so we also need maybe a border, then we can try to create a border, and we shall also create a border stroke. Obtain a parameter from the border stroke. Inside we shall pass in the width. For now we can put it to 1 dps. Then we also need our border to have some color, so the color will be the colors from our theme. We can try to use our theme, then plus colors, class, then we shall now call the border colors. Okay, dot border. Then after finishing to pass in everything in the surface, and we shall create a column. Within a column, we shall try to pass in some parameters. We need a modifier. But for now, let's try to aligning it horizontally. We shall also have to arrange it vertically. So we shall call the arrangement dot space between. Okay, we shall maybe let's use space by. Okay, space by, and we shall pass in 20 dps. Alright, so we try to pass in the icon. In the icon we have an image vector. Image vector can pass the icons. The default, you can pass in the favorite icon. So that's our favorite icon that we always have. Okay, so after that we shall also pass in the content description. In this case we can maybe put the Aura logo. Just put in the text. Some people can just put it to null, which is okay. Then we shall put it to material theme, load color scheme, then we use the primary color. Alright, and maybe we also need to give it a size modifier. And modifier is called modifier, then shall give it a size of 32. These are the 32 dps. Okay, we shall have to import that one. And after that, we can be able to see our icons the way they are following just below the icon that we just implemented, the heart. Alright, so we shall continue. Then we will have to implement the items to show how they will be selected and all that stuff. So let's first put the spacer to give that spacing. We shall maybe call it a height. In this case, we shall give it 12 dps. In this case, let's call our primary items dot for each. We shall be iterating through them. We shall pass in our item as a lambda. Let's click there. And then we shall initialize a new variable. While we shall call it is selected. In this case will be a boolean. It will be equaling to current destination. And you put a null check. Dot hierarchy. Then we shall call the keyword dot any. Now we used to have used these brackets. Then we shall call the it dot route, and we shall check it's the correct route or it contains. Then Alright, so what this does, we shall use the contains here because the root strings might include arguments or prefixes, and then for the ignore case, true makes it more forgiving. Yeah, so now let's try to also implement a sidebar icon. In this case, you're going to pass in an icon, and then change the item sidebar dest. Okay, let's first pass in our item. We shall pass in, oh sorry, here we cannot get our items. We shall just come inside the primary items, and we shall have to pass in the sidebar icon. The icon shall pass in the icon is equal to items dot sidebar destination. What is it? Okay, that's it. Then after, we shall also call the icon, also pass in the other parameter is active is equal to is selected. So if it's sec, that means will be active. So I also have to pass in our on click. And on click is equal to on click shall pass in an if statement. So this if statement will be checking when if it is not selected or when selected, what will happen. So if it is not selected, what will happen? So we shall have to call the NavController.navigate. NavController.navigate. Inside the navigation, we shall have to pass in the item destination. So we shall pass in the nav destination from that specific item. And we shall also call the pop-up tool. So in this case, the whole of this thing, it will be the whole of this logic we are trying to implement. It's going to be the navigation call with a single top, then and also with state restoration that prevents duplicate screens and preserves scroll position. So we shall keep on. We shall also add in an ID. Then inside we shall put the body. Then inside we shall put a state restoration, a state where we shall enable this self state true. Okay, self state shall set it to true. And we shall also have to launch a single top, hit enter, then shall give it to true. We shall also have to restore. After that, we shall have to restore our state. Okay, we'll have to restore our state, and that will be also assigned true. And also implement the remaining parameter, the modifier. For now, we can just pass in the modifier as a placeholder. Alright, so after that, we also need to implement we also have to create another column, but this column will be containing the sidebar icons that were at the bottom. So let's try to give it an alignment center horizontally. Then we shall also give it an arrangement which is vertical. Arrangement.space-by, maybe let's give it like 20 dps. Okay, so let's put the body. Inside the body we shall pass in sidebar icon. Inside the sidebar icon, we are going to give it a sidebar destination. Sidebar destination, okay. Sidebar destination, then we shall pass in the support, and then give it the icon. We shall also pass in our boolean. So in this case, let's just give it a false. Shall also pass in on click lambda. Now shall I just make it empty, but then I think we missed one. Okay, modifier, let's just put the placeholder modifier. Alright, so after that we can just maybe copy and paste the whole of that, but in this case you're going to replace the support with reports. Let's replace it with reports. Alright, so now we are good to go. So when we check, we shall be able to see that we've implemented all those icons in their respective positions. So now we shall have to remain with previewing our UI to see how it will be able to be shown when it is within the UI. So let's create a function, and we can call it the Aurora. We can call it the Aurora navigation rail preview. Okay, let's call it that name, then create our body, and let's just pass in our theme. So sometimes when you don't define the theme, you can just always use the default material theme. Yeah. So now in this, let's try to pass in the parameters. In this case, let's just put the remember NavController. This one. Okay. So in this, we can maybe decide if it's a dark or maybe light. So let's try to pass in the dark theme. Okay, is it dark or light? So now we just put it to false, meanwhile we shall be dealing with the light theme. Then after that, we can try to see that now after previewing, it is showing our bar, but then we don't have this. So let's try to create a spacer which will later give this a weight of 1, and then they can be able to go to the bottom. So we're going to create a spacer, then we give the weight of 1, and we see if these two icons at the bottom, they can go to the extreme end at the bottom of this nav rail of ours. So after waiting for a few minutes, it should be able to put them at the bottom. So as you can see, now they are already at the bottom. Okay, so now we've successfully completed it, and now we are going to create a new class, and we are going to be able to create our floating navigation bar. Yeah, so let's continue. So now this floating bar hours, we are going to first create a private data class. Let's create a private data class, and we can call it floating nav bar item, and we shall try to declare some variables. We shall declare a label, in this case which is a string. We shall also declare a variable or selected icon, and our icon, selected icon, and we want to use this icon as an image vector. Shall we put that one? We also declare another variable of the unselected icon. Unselected icon shall also call it, it will also be an image vector. Right. Also have to declare a navigation destination. Okay, so what the whole of this does is that we are going to define a simple internal data class that connects each tab to its label, icons, and destination route. So let's try to import the nav destination. Okay, and yeah, this keeps everything organized and easy to extend later. Okay, so after finishing to implement this data class of ours that will help us to keep everything organized, we shall try to now implement the real composable. Shall create a composable shall now shall create a function with floating nav. Okay, so inside our composable, we shall pass in some parameters. Let's pass in a NavController. Then also we shall pass in a boolean false visible. Let's pass in a boolean false visible. I will explain what this does. It is mainly for previews, so we can see if it is even without. Okay. So after that, we shall create a body. Then this body shall create a variable called the nav items. We shall give it a member. Okay. So yeah, this is the main. These are the main items. And we use remember so that the list is also created once. So we shall pass in a list of. Let's pass in our float nav bar item. Then we shall pass in now the parameters that the item has. So we shall pass in the label, which is home. Icons, we can also use the icons dot default field. Okay, field. Then we shall give the grid view. It's the dashboard. Then we shall also put for the unselected, I put icons dot outlined. Then we shall also pass in the grid view. Okay, also have one parameter missing, which is the routes. So we shall give it a route, which is the dashboard. And we shall be able to do this for all the routes. So let's also go and add other routes. So we can just copy paste or press Ctrl D using Android Studio. So after implementing all our nav items, so that means that we shall be able to create our other logic for the navigation. So most of it will be almost the same as how we did in the navigation rail. Now we shall try to create, I'm not in the scope, so let me try to go inside the function. So I will create a new variable, which is the nav backstack entry. So val, I'm going to create another variable called null nav backstack entry. Okay, try to create that one, then use by NavController. Then after that I will call the current backstack entry as state. Okay, so that's it. So calling it, I also need to import. Okay, so now I need also to create another variable, which is the current destination, as for example like how we did in our nav array. So nav stack entry, then we shall call the destination. Okay, so now we need a way to show if the bottom bar is on the main tab screen or in the detail screen. So we shall initialize another variable, is visible. Then we shall use an OR operator. Then after implementing all, we shall return it to true. Okay, so we shall also continue to check if it is visible. What will happen if is visible is true or false, depending on what we initialized at first. So this logic simply helps us to know when we navigate through detail screens in a way that our floating bar should not be shown, and when you're in the main screen it should always be shown. So that is what we use to compare. So now this one here, if we are not on the main tab and not forcing it visible, so we just return early, so that no bar gets drawn. So now we shall try to create our surface. Then surface is passing our modifier, Then we shall put in a height of 72 dps. Then we shall also assign a width of 340 dps. 340 dps, and also shall let's try to give it a shape. Let's try to give a circle shape. Let's give it a circle shape. Then we shall also give it color. We shall get it from the Aurora theme dot class. Then we shall give it a surface, and we shall also try to copy. Then we'll give it an alpha of 0.95 f. Okay, so let's try to also create a border for this surface of ours. Shall create a border, then we shall call the border stroke. Border stroke shall give the width of 1 dp. And we shall also give it a color or a theme class border. Color or a theme. Let me see, or a theme. Let's first remove this. Remove this in dot class dot border. Okay, so now we also need to give our surface a tonal elevation. Let's try to give the tonal elevation of around 8 dps. Alright, so after that we shall have to pass in the body now, the body which contains the icons and the selected stuff. So now we have been able to implement that surface with a rounded corner shape among others. So let's try to implement our body. So we shall try to create a row, and in the row, so in the row we are going to pass in a modifier. I want it to fill the max size, so let's pass in that one. And we are going to also give it a padding. So we give it a horizontal padding of about 12 dps. Okay, so since it is a row, we also need to give it a horizontal arrangement. Arrangement dot space. Let's use space evenly. Hit enter. Okay, so after that also have to give it a vertical alignment. Vertical alignment dot center vertically. Alright, so that in our row we are going to pass in the nav items that we declared earlier. Then for each nav item, we're going to pass in a boolean. So we're going to pass in a lambda. So for each item we are going to create a new variable is selected is equal to the current destination. We are again going to check if this item is currently selected by looking at the hierarchy. So we are going to check into the hierarchy, then we shall see if the item that is contained in that root is in that destination. So after implementing our logic, we shall also try to initialize another variable. In this case we can call it val animated color. by okay is equal to, oh, not really, this is supposed to be val animated color by animated color state color as state, color as state. Then I'll pass in the targeted value, and targeted value I'm going to try to use an if statement, so that if it is selected, if the item is selected, okay, so I didn't get the real input I wanted. Let me first go inside this bracket. So if it's selected, now it is working, which is okay. So if is selected, then we shall have the material theme dot color scheme dot primary. So we shall give it a primary color if it is selected. So else we shall give it a material theme. We shall give it another color. Let's call it material theme dot color scheme, material theme, okay, material theme dot color scheme. Then we'll give it non-surface color, surface variant. Shall give it a copy of an alpha which is 0.6f. okay, 0.6f. So now here we are okay. So whenever we click that, we'll give an animation which changes with the color. So we can also give it a label, is nav icon color. And after that, we shall also create a column. After creating our animated color, that will always animate instead of when we just click on the item. So alright, now we are going to create a column. Each tab will be wrapped in a clickable area with no ripple, so that we can have a clean look. So in our column, we are going to pass in a horizontal alignment dot center horizontally, Shall also give it a vertical arrangement in arrangement dot center. Okay, then we shall also pass in a modifier that will help us access other parameters. Modifier shall give it a shape. This case shall give it a circle shape. Now I'll also pass in a clickable, like when you click it, what really happens. And we shall pass in an interaction source. Okay. Let's first try to pass in the correct interaction source. Maybe the brackets are not the ones. Okay, now they should work. Interaction source. Then the interaction source, I'm going to give you remember mutable interaction source. Then for the indication, I'll pass in a null. And now the next thing we are going to do, we are going to implement the navigation logic, which will contain the single top and the saved with the restore state pattern. So if it is not selected, what will have to happen? So as you can see, we've finished implementing our clickable stuff. So let's try to also now implement the logic if it is not selected. So we shall pass in a NavController, then we shall try to navigate to the item destination. So we shall call item dot destination, and inside with the body we shall pass pop-up 2, and this is almost the same thing that we did within our side navbar. So we shall find the destination.id, then inside that we shall have to pass in the save state equaling to true. Save state equaling to true, and it should save the state. Then we shall, okay, after that we shall then launch a single top. Now remove it to true. Then we shall also restore the state. Okay, so after implementing that, that means we finished the state. If it is not selected, this is what will happen in the navigation bar. So we shall also have to implement our padding as 8 dps. And after that we shall have to create an icon that will be switching between the field and outline depending on the selection. So let's call an icon, and the icon shall pass in the image vector. Image vector is equal to if it is selected, then we shall have the item dot selected icon, else item dot unselected. So if we select it, we will call the selected icon. If it's not selected, we call the unselected icon. Then we shall also put the content description as item dot label. Now we shall use its label. Then we shall also pass in our tint. In this case, we shall check it will be the animated color that we initialized earlier. We also have a modifier to specify the size as 24. Modifier dot size. Okay, let's give it 24 dps. Okay, so after that, maybe we shall have to have some space, and we shall use a spacer. Composable, this is a spacer. Then we shall pass in a modifier dot height, and we shall give it 4 dps. Alright, then after that, now what will happen if it is selected? So when selected, we shall show a nice animated dot indicator instead of a text. So what we shall do, if it is selected, we shall create a box that will act as a small animator that we shall be seeing. So box modifier is equal to modifier, and dot size shall give it 4 dps, should be a bit smaller. You shall also have a background, but in this case we can give it an animated color with a circle shape. Okay, so else if we don't choose the animated dot, what shall we do? We shall try to show the text. Not selected, we shall show small label below the icon, which is the text. So we shall use the text, then we shall pass in the text, which will be the text of the icon, and we get it from the label. Okay, then we shall also give it a font size of 10 sp, and try. Okay, also give it a font weight font weight. Try to import that. Let's import the SP. Alright, and after that let's also give it a color. Why am I looking at an error? Maybe, okay, let's put medium. Then let's give it a color. Now we are going to use the material theme, not color scheme. Color scheme, and we are going to give it a on surface variant. On surface variant with an alpha of 0.6, alpha 0.6 f. 0.6 f. Okay, so right now we are done with our implementation of the floating navigation bar. So now we need a way of previewing it to see, is it actually previewing what we expected? Okay, so now let's try to preview. Now we shall use an annotation, preview, then we shall give it a name like how we are doing all the others. So we should just give it a name, floating bar, floating nav, floating nav. And we shall maybe begin with a light mode. We begin with a light mode. Then we shall assign it, we shall bring the composable annotation. We shall try to use a private function. You can also use a function if you want. In this case, I'm just using the private function. Okay, private fun, floating navigation bar, preview light. Okay, preview light. So we shall wrap everything into our Aurora theme. Then into the Aurora theme we shall pass in our box. In our box we shall put in a modifier and dot fill max size, and shall also fill max size. Then shall pass in the background. Pass in the background as the Aurora theme, got glass, and we shall give the gradient color. And we shall also include our content alignment, which will be equal to alignment to bottom center, because we need at the bottom, so let's try to put the bottom center. Okay, so the body, we shall have to pass in the body for the box. We shall put the brackets, then we shall pass in the floating navigation bar of ours. So the floating nav bar, we have to pass in the arguments. NavController is equal to remember NavController, so I have to pass in the boolean. For now, we shall force it to true, force visible to true. Alright, so now we shall be able to preview our light theme using this preview. So, but then we need to put one more thing. We shall include our dark theme equaling to false, since it is the light theme. So we shall just copy this and paste it here and change the light to dark. We also just change this to dark. So I need to change this parameter. Okay, so now if we preview our UIs, we should be able to see the bottom nav bar, which is floating, and as you can see, it has been created successfully.